Picture this. You are standing in a Roman villa courtyard in the middle of the 1st century. The air is warm, the stone beneath your feet still holding the heat of the day. In front of you, a wealthy landowner studies a young enslaved girl, no older than 14. His attention is clinical, detached. He examines her teeth for signs of health. He measures her hips, assessing her capacity to bear children. Then he opens a leather-bound ledger and calmly records her estimated reproductive value. This is not a livestock auction. This is human breeding. And in ancient Rome, it was not only practiced, it was systematized, documented, and refined into an economic science. What you are about to hear challenges the image of Roman civilization as merely the birthplace of law, literature, and engineering. Because alongside those achievements existed one of the most methodical systems of reproductive exploitation in ancient history. Roman elites did not simply own enslaved people. They calculated them, they optimized them, they bred them, and they left records. Some of the most revealing evidence comes from the estate ledgers of Marcus Licinius Crassus, one of the richest men Rome ever produced. His wealth did not come solely from politics or conquest. A significant portion came from the deliberate breeding of enslaved human beings. When archaeologists uncovered records from villas associated with his enterprises, they found documents that read less like household accounts and more like agricultural manuals. Except the livestock being discussed were women and children. The calculations were precise. A healthy 16-year-old enslaved woman might cost a few thousand sesterces to purchase. But over the course of 20 years, she could be expected to produce 8 or more children, each worth far more than her original price. In purely economic terms, she represented long-term profit. Human reproduction had been reduced to arithmetic. These ledgers tracked menstrual cycles, pregnancy outcomes, and infant mortality with disturbing detachment. Women who failed to conceive within a designated time frame were marked as inefficient and sold off at reduced value. Fertility was not a private matter. It was a metric. Pairings were carefully engineered. Male and female slaves were matched based on physical traits, perceived intelligence, and regional stereotypes. Strength was paired with skill, beauty with perceived intellect. The goal was not family, but product. Children suitable for labor, domestic service, or administration. Archaeology reinforces this picture. Excavations of Roman villas reveal separate quarters for pregnant women, expanded spaces designed not for comfort but for efficiency. These layouts minimized disease risk and maximized reproductive output. The architecture itself was part of the system. Modern forensic analysis of skeletal remains confirms what the documents imply. Female skeletons show evidence of repeated pregnancies beginning in early adolescence. Pelvic deformities indicate childbirth injuries that today would be medical emergencies. In Roman breeding systems, they were accepted losses. Roman writers did not hide this reality. They formalized it. Agricultural texts by authors such as Marcus Terentius Varro included sections on managing enslaved reproduction using the same principles applied to sheep and cattle. These works survived for centuries, copied by medieval scribes, preserving instructions that treat human fertility as a controllable resource. Varro advised purchasing girls between 12 and 16 years old for optimal reproductive potential. He calculated the ideal age for first pregnancy not based on well-being, but on maximizing reproductive years while minimizing the financial loss of maternal death. Diets for pregnant women were prescribed to strengthen offspring, not to protect mothers. Nutrition was investment. Strong male slaves were isolated and designated exclusively for breeding. They were housed separately, fed better, and protected not out of kindness, but because they were valuable genetic assets. Children were removed from their mothers at an early age to free women for further pregnancies and to prevent emotional bonds that might interfere with compliance. Women who failed to conceive after repeated attempts were sold. Men whose children were deemed weak were reassigned to dangerous labor. This was not cruelty born of chaos. It was calculated efficiency. But breeding required more than physical control. It required psychological destruction. Newly enslaved women underwent what Roman sources referred to as a domestication period. For months, sometimes longer, they were isolated from others. Contact was limited to a designated trainer, often an older enslaved woman who had already been conditioned. Food was restricted. Identity was stripped away. Native names, languages, and religious practices were forbidden. Compliance was rewarded. Resistance was punished. Survival itself became dependent on obedience. Family separation was deliberate. Mothers arriving with children had them taken immediately. This trauma served multiple purposes. It removed emotional distractions. It broke resistance. And it created leverage for future control. Roman sources measured success through behavioral markers. A fully conditioned woman showed complete sexual compliance, minimal emotional attachment to her children, and the ability to assist in conditioning others. These women were considered premium reproductive assets. The ultimate product of this system was the verna, enslaved people born into captivity who had never known freedom. Roman writers regarded them as superior investments. Without memory of independence, they were seen as more compliant, more efficient, and more reliable. Agricultural texts recommended that the majority of a villa's enslaved population consist of these houseborn individuals. From birth, their lives were managed. Physical evaluations determined their future roles. Those deemed defective were often killed immediately. Survivors were branded or marked, categorized, and trained for specific purposes. Education was provided where useful, but always framed as a gift from ownership, never as personal worth. Sexual conditioning began early for those intended for breeding. Emotional detachment was taught as necessity. Reproduction was purpose. Even Roman medicine adapted to serve this system. Physicians developed practices focused on preserving offspring rather than mothers. Surgical techniques, including early forms of caesarean extraction, were performed on dying women to recover valuable infants. Maternal survival was secondary. This machinery of exploitation was not invulnerable. During the revolt led by Spartacus, rebel forces deliberately targeted breeding facilities. When villas were captured, records were burned, specialized chambers destroyed, and enslaved people integrated to disrupt reproductive control. Archaeological evidence shows systematic demolition of nurseries and medical rooms associated with slave breeding. Roman military responses reveal how critical these systems were. Protecting reproductive infrastructure was treated as a matter of state security. The reprisals following the revolt were designed to terrorize anyone who threatened it. Excavations across the former empire continue to uncover the physical remains of this system. Specialized maternity complexes, infant burial sites, medical instruments unlike those found in free households. Each discovery reinforces the written record. The legacy of Roman human breeding did not end with Rome. Its principles echoed through later systems of slavery, colonial exploitation, and modern trafficking. The techniques of control, the destruction of identity, the economic framing of reproduction, all have ancient roots. Understanding this history matters because it reveals how easily intelligence and organization can be turned toward moral catastrophe. Civilization does not guarantee humanity. Rome's achievements are undeniable, but so is the cost at which many of them were built. To confront this past is not to erase history. It is to see it clearly, and to recognize that progress means nothing if it is not grounded in the recognition of human dignity, something too many in the ancient world, and too many since, were willing to deny. If these forgotten voices unsettle you, they should. They were meant to.